Hafaday, Micronesia. It's May 2nd, and I'm Troy Torres with Candid News from our studios here in Hagåtña. If you saw our first try at this, I'm very sorry. We had technical difficulties. I would try to explain them to you, but I don't understand them. Something about frame speed or something in Chinese that I don't understand. And for our Chinese viewers, that's not meant to, that we're just not politically correct here at Candid News, okay? We're like the furthest thing from politically correct. However, we will try to keep it as professional as possible, especially in a setup like this in our news studio. I won't be smoking, I won't be cussing, but in the other stuff I do, I'll do all that stuff. So I'll skip over the birthdays that I said in the first thing and get right to our feature story, and we'll take it from the top. Monsters are more than the antithesis of heroes in fairy tales. Serial child rapist Paul Moffness is one example of a real-life monster. So are many others who prey on children, hurt and kill without remorse. Some of them are people who you think you love, when all they've done is played a game with your heart that stretches your tolerance for abuse to the capacity of your love before tricking you with kindness in an endless vortex of pure evil. They're all called sociopaths, and they come in many forms, but always appear to be everything they're not: kind, loving, understanding, compassionate, and caring. Under the faux exterior is the truth, one that they manage with charm, charisma, and an ability to lie with impunity. They can do these things not because they have an extra power, but precisely because they lack their link to humanity itself, conscience. Others call it empathy, others call it love. But what happens when the monster isn't a person, but a system that you trust? And what do you do when that monster has killed your child by its cold negligence and its lack of any responsibility, accountability, or empathy for its actions? You do what you do to dismantle any sociopath's hold on power. You call it out. You cut your communication and you tell everyone what the monster has done and what the monster is capable of if you trust him. That's what David Lebowski is doing ever since a system of medical providers left his 5-year-old son, Asher Dean, dead the morning of Halloween last year. He had no idea his son was so close to death. 2 hours before he died, they were making plans to go with Asher's mother and 6-year-old brother Azrael on a family vacation. He was alert and speaking. He didn't have any known disease or condition. All he had was a fever, the same kind of fever that any little kid will get. But there were signs of something else happening, signs that a doctor worth his practice will hear from a stethoscope or see with his naked eye under an examination. That's the thing that should frighten us about the medical system here on Guam. Asher did see a doctor 2 days before he died. His father took him to see one at the SDA clinic in Tumuning. 1 day later, Asher went back to the clinic because his condition was getting worse. A physician assistant refused Asher to see one of their doctors. That's when David Lebowski took his son to the GMH emergency room. A couple of doctors saw Asher for a few minutes. Then he was transferred to the pediatrics ward. In the 12 hours before he died, not a single doctor saw him until he coded. Noted on the child's medical chart prior to his move to the pediatrics ward was one word: sepsis. It wasn't that no one knew. The problem is that the system didn't care. Candid was fortunate enough to speak with David Lebowski, who gave us a full interview, and we'll have the full interview posted later, but here are excerpts from it that we want to show you tonight.
We got in Saturday morning early. It came up the Philippine Airlines flight, and we got in, got settled in. It's early morning, and the kids and I went to sleep. Woke up later that day, and we were out running around. Saturday night, Asher started showing some symptoms. He wasn't feeling well, but he's a 5-year-old that, and 5-year-olds get sick sometimes, small sickness. I remember him spitting up or throwing up something that he ate. I didn't really think anything of it Saturday night because it's not the first time he's thrown something up or spit something up. And he seemed a little bit warm, but he went to bed. Then Sunday was the 28th. That morning he threw up. He was throwing up. He ate something and he threw it up, and he had a fever. So I gave him. I tried to give him the fever medicine I had for children, and he couldn't hold it down. So I thought, okay, Ash. But I also had from traveling. I had the flavored Tylenol. I don't think it was Tylenol. I forget the name of it, but the flavored pills they can take for fever for kids. No, it was the pills, like little pills, little candy-like pills. But they're like they put out like one of the companies, Tylenol, whatever. But they're flavored, and it's not something you have to drink. And I think it's a lot easier for him to hold it down. So he took those, and after a while, he drank some more, and after a while, his fever went down, and we went out on the 28th. And we went running around, did a bunch of things. He didn't really look that sick all during the day, but later in the day, fever came back, and that night he couldn't eat, and he threw up again, and so forth. And his fever got bad, and I gave him more medicine. I thought to myself, I need to take him to the doctor. And I was thinking I should take him then. We were in Sunday at that time. And I said, no. I thought to myself, no. He has a full annual physical tomorrow. By coincidence, this is a coincidence. It's set up, full annual physical set up on the 29th. This was the 28th. I said, no, just take him in tomorrow. We went in, doctor, and the nurse did the vitals and all those. And by the way, before we left for the clinic, he was sick. He had a fever. He wasn't feeling well. He was throwing up also that morning before we left out to go Monday morning. But again, this is a mistake on my part, and parents should be aware of this. I gave him fever medicine, the same fever medicine, and it brought the fever down before he went to the clinic. And that's a good thing in one way, but another way, it masks the symptoms. And of course, the doctor, that's exactly the first thing the doctor said to me. Oh, he doesn't have a fever now. And I said, he has had a fever and throwing up off and on since Saturday night.
And you told him that you gave him fever medicine.
Clearly, I told him I gave him fever medicine. I've been with that clinic for 30 years, and I've got at least another 3 other children that have gone through there. All have wellness exams, and I'm really careful with what I say to doctors. And he was sick, and I was worried about him. Plus, by the time he got there Monday morning, his voice was raspy.
Was it busy that morning?
No busier than usual. I don't remember it being busy. I don't remember how long we waited. So, but it's just like an average amount of time. No busier than usual. So the doctor, the nurse does all that she's supposed to do, does his height and weight, and does his eye checkup, and takes his vital signs. And we go in to see the doctor, and the doctor is looking up, explaining to me. I give the doctor first of all his vaccination chart record, and it's stuff that he's had. And he left the room. This is important why I'm telling you this. He left the room. The fire nurse to photocopy or whatever. Came back in, and then he was discussing his body mass and that kind of information from that stuff. And I'm telling him, I'm saying, Doc, I told him this something like he's been sick all weekend, not feeling good. He's been throwing up. He's got fever off and on, and you can hear his voice. And now it was raspy. That was an add-on symptom going into the clinic that morning because I didn't notice that I didn't notice that Sunday night his voice was raspy, and he was after he got done doing all that kind of stuff, and so he goes the vitals are all normal, and he doesn't have a temperature now. I said, Doc, I just gave him the medicine to lower his to lower his fever, and so forth. He goes, that's why. And I explained to him again, he's been sick. And he said, oh no, blah 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 blah. And he said, no, what we probably should do is just keep monitor him. At this time, there had been no physical.
Did you order a blood test?
No. later I found out, by the way, from somebody at the clinic that Asher's vitals are all in the, hi- in the normal limits, but at the higher levels.
So his oxygen, his blood pressure.
I think the oxygen at the clinic was okay, but the other vitals, I'm not, I think, I forget what the oxygen was at that time, but I think it was okay. But so I'm explaining all this to the doctor, and then I said, no, what's this moment? And I looked at I'm thinking to myself, are you forgetting that we're here for an annual physical? This is the same thing, by the way, in 2017 when he saw my son. And I didn't want to see this doctor for 2018. When I called up to set up the appointment for this, they told me he was the only one available, and I asked for somebody else. I ended up taking him. I regret it now. So and when he went back and
You asked for somebody else, and they told you that was not possible.
in 2017, Dr. Miyagi did the physical for my son. He maybe took 20 minutes at that time, at the most, the time that he had with my son to do an annual physical. And I wasn't happy with it. It was a abbreviated. It wasn't even a physical. It was a shortcut. And then when I called, and I wasn't happy with him. And then when I called up to set up the 2018 appointment, which was October 29th, the date we're talking about, they told me that Dr. Miyagi is my family doctor, and I asked for someone else. They said, well, he's the only one available at that time, because we're only, available at that time. So I said, okay, I'll just push him to do the right thing he's supposed to be doing. Little did I know how true those words were going to be later on. And if we could ever find out who took the phone call, and if she ever remembers, I strongly said, I don't really want to see him. Again, I want to see somebody else. It's really weird the way things turn out. So anyways, he's talking to me, and he's doing all this stuff, and about and I said, you know, he can't have immunization today because he's got fever and everything else. And then finally he said, well, we'll just monitor him. He doesn't have fever now. And he said, okay. And he was like setting us out. He did. One time I think he checked my son's private ear while my son was standing there, pulled his pants out or something. And he said, okay, we'll monitor him. I said, wait. I'm saying to him, he's here for an annual physical. You don't do an annual physical. At that time, I said 15 minutes, but it ends up it was in the office for 20 minutes. Later that, same repeat. Later that day, he's not able to eat. He's throwing up again. He's not holding food. He's looking bad. And I should have realized that he was getting really bad because I had clothes for them. I went to the post office. I bought some clothes that were sent by Old Navy or whatever. And I called him in to try the clothes on. Only his brother came in. I was calling to him, come in. And I was peculiar. I went out and I saw him. He's laying on the sofa playing with his tablet. It didn't seem right. Didn't click. But by the time the next morning rolled, he was sick that night. But the next morning rolled around, all hell broke loose. He was totally sick. He was fever. He's really hot. The medicine wasn't. I got up. I gave him the medicine. It wasn't bringing it down. I said, okay, let's go back to the clinic. We gotta go now. Let's get up. And I threw him in the shower. Both kids in the shower. I tried to give him something to eat. I still have the food that he ate that morning in my refrigerator. I packaged it and I kept it. It was sitting at the table after he passed. I didn't want to throw it away. So this is another mistake I made. I should have never gone back to the Seventh-day Adventist. Where I live, I'm in Upper Tumon. I should have turned left and went to the Guam Regional Medical Center. And instead, I'm still thinking he's not that sick. He's got something going on, but we don't know what it is. So I will go to urgent care at Seventh-day Adventist. While I'm getting him dressed that morning, I freaked out. I said, okay, I just get dressed. And I was in their room getting Azrael dressed. And I said, I'm all dressed, Daddy. He said to me, Asher. And I walked in, he's totally naked. I said, you dressed? He goes, yes. He didn't know what he was talking about. And he couldn't. He didn't know where he was. He was all confused. He couldn't talk right. His voice was really raspy. Raspy's not the word, it was worse. Off to SDA we go, and into urgent care. I should never have gone back there. especially after Dr. Miyagi's fiasco. Go into urgent care. We go right into urgent care. They pass us right into urgent care. And the second nightmare begins. Just keep one thing in mind. I've got a 6-year-old with me, by myself, and a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old is dying. I don't know it, but he is. And I know he's sick. My little boy doesn't even know where he is. And he's got a sweatshirt on with the hood, and he's shaking, and he's got fever, and everything else is going on. Yeah, he was cold. And fever at the same time. By the time we got here, that's why I had him with the hood. He had his hood on. And we got in there. So we the physician assistant is the one that's assigned to us. His name is Ethan Snyder.
Did Ethan realize that Asher was shaking? That he had a fever and...
But yeah, he should have. He's examining him. He's examining him. So
and he never once said that this is a symptom of septic shock?
no, I don't think that Seventh-day Adventists at that point. I'm not sure where along the way that they knew it was septic. It was in the reports afterwards. But Ethan Snyder, who's a physician assistant, not a doctor, starts off and he says to me, this is what he said. And this is where I said to you earlier, people don't tell you really what's going on with your kids. He said to me, we cannot, almost exact words, we cannot do an assessment here. No, he needs a full assessment that we can't do here. He needs to go to the ER at the hospital. And why he's saying that? I'm saying, did you check his records from yesterday? And he said, well, you didn't see me. I go, no. Can you check to see what Dr. Miyagi said yesterday while he was here? Dr. Miyagi didn't do anything for my son the day before, but maybe he wrote something down that's helpful that I don't know about. Obviously, by looking at these records, not. But I didn't know that. I said, check the mannerism. Ethan Snyder, well, you didn't see me. You didn't see me. This is the way he's talking to me. I'm stressed out with 2 kids, and this is how they're professional, Seventh-day Adventists. It doesn't matter if I'm not raising my voice. I'm not saying bad words, but I'm definitely stressed. Well, you didn't see me. You didn't see me like this. I go, I'm not saying I saw you. I saw somebody else, and he will not go check the records.
That your son, prior to his passing, you had not seen a doctor. A doctor hadn't seen him for 12 hours. Is that right?
When he was, we're talking about Guam Memorial Hospital. He was admitted to Guam Memorial Hospital on the morning of the 30th. He came in through the ER, and in the ER he saw the staff at the ER. They did everything they're supposed to do. They didn't put him into ICU, which they should have. But anyways, then they admitted him to a room. I think it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and maybe at 7 p.m. Dr. Garrido, the pediatrician, came in for about 10 minutes, at the most, maybe 12 minutes. And he told me that it looks like my son has pneumonia, and also there might be something else going on, but it wasn't clear. But I'm talking about pneumonia.
And they never told you at this point that he was going to septic shock?
They never said anything about how serious his condition was. A matter of fact, from the very beginning, I knew he was sick, but I was never led to believe, told by anyone, that he was dying. I had no idea what was going on, except that he had pneumonia. Pneumonia, he's in the hospital, he's going to be okay, and so forth, and something else is going on, and they're going to take care. They're going to take care. And also at that time, I didn't realize that they never did a virus culture. He had a virus because they did an X-ray in the ER, and they said he has a virus, and they said it looks like pneumonia, but they never cultured it. And from what I understand later on, hospitals are supposed to culture a virus because they want to know what they're treating and what they're dealing with, and there's public health issues that might go along with it, which became more prevalent later on. So maybe at 7 p.m., I don't know the exact time, 7 to 7:15, Dr. Garrido, my son passed away 12 hours later, about 7 a.m. in the morning, and no one, many nurses, no doctor that I know of ever, and I was holding my son all night. I'm in bed with him all night holding. It was my job to hold the respirator on his face. And I said to them, we're in the pediatric ward. Don't you have a way to, to hold the respirator on. He kept fighting and taking it off. I said, isn't there some other way? I don't know anything about these things. I'm not a doctor. No, so just help us and you just hold the respirator. So all night I held his respirator in place, and he keeps pulling it off, and he's arguing with me. Doesn't want the respirator. He's 5. Doesn't want the respirator on his face. And no doctor came into the room to look at him at all the whole night. He passed around 7 a.m. in the morning. I don't remember the exact hour, about 12 hours after Dr. Garrido came in. And at that time, about 8 doctors come running in. Dr. Garrido, Sormento, people in the ER, and some other doctors, I don't remember their names, all come running in to try to revive him and giving condolences. And I'm thinking to myself, where were you all night? First of all, I didn't know my son was dying. I have no idea I have no idea.
Were there no alerts that went off?
Yeah. For me, there was some alerts. The first alert is that he had blood coming from his nose, and I said to the nurses, I said, "What's this? What's this?" And she said, "Well, sometimes the respirator will dry out the nose, and this is common for blood to come up." So I bought into that, and he's fit. No, doctor. The nurse told me that. No, doctor. And then the nurse told me also that they were thinking about his oxygen level was at, if I remember, it was like 88%, and it's supposed to be up over 90, like 92 or 93 or something. So that's why we have to keep the respirator on and so forth and so on. And at maybe 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, they told me that we have to move. We're thinking about moving him into ICU. No doctor came in the room. They might be looking at the records that the nurses are taking out, but no doctor came in that room. I was with my son all night. No doctors. And that's why I'm thinking he's not that sick. I'm buying into the whole concept of what my observations are. My observations are he's got blood. He says because of this. His face also didn't look right to me. It looked like he was getting some swelling. Something wasn't right. I'm telling this to the nurse. So they said we're thinking about putting him into the ICU. Then maybe about 15 minutes after she said that, she was, instead of putting him to ICU, we're going to move him next to our desk. So in other words, there's a series of pediatric rooms, treatment rooms, hospital rooms in the pediatric ward. And he was down maybe towards the end, so they moved him right across from the nurse's station. But still, across from the nurse's station is not the ICU. So I thought, oh, God, so that way they're closer, so they come in. I'm thinking to myself, everything's going to be okay. And I'm just going by what they're saying. You know, I feel bad about this because maybe I should have known more, maybe I should look closer, or what. When his mom had called and spoke to him on the phone, she said to me, "He doesn't look well." I said, "Yes, he doesn't look well at all, but they're saying this and that, and they're treating him and so forth." A lot of this didn't become noticeable. I didn't realize a lot of this until after he had passed, and we went back and started looking at the medical records, and realized no doctor saw my son.
And no nurse.
The nurses were there. They were in the room all the time. They were there all the time. I can't say the nurses were there. They were taking his vitals. I don't know even. I'm not sure when they took blood tests, but I know they took a blood test of him at 6 a.m. in the morning, from what I understand. He died about 7. So I'm wondering if they took the blood. Maybe the blood test result wasn't up. If they took a blood test at 6, couldn't they see how he looked? He was in trouble, distress. The blood test would have shown all of it. It's done stat. By the time they got, maybe he had already passed. I don't know. I'm just looking at what the record says. But they're looking at him all night. I'm laying him in bed, and I'm keeping asking him. It's very difficult to hold the respirator. I'm not complaining, but it's very difficult to hold the respirator on a 5-year-old who's arguing with you the whole night. That's why I know that he should probably have been intubated, because he was fighting to keep that respirator on. And we're in a pediatric unit. They must face this all the time. So, yeah. So no doctors came in the whole time, and they never did the virus. They never even cultured him to find out what virus he had. And then at 7 o'clock, around 7 o'clock in the morning, he passed.
Well, what time was the last time he spoke to you?
Let's see. I was talking to him. I was talking to him all night because, trying to keep the mask on. He kept putting his arms around me. I said, Daddy, sorry. He kept telling me, Daddy, I love you. 2 or 3 times during the night. He told the nurse, I love my daddy. I said to him, we need to take a trip when you get out of here. Where do you want to go? He said, I want to go to Hong Kong, Disneyland. I said, okay, but you got to keep the respirator on, okay? Because that's the way we're going to. He said, okay, Daddy. At 5:30 in the I was talking to him about 5 o'clock. At 5:30 in the morning, I think that was about the last time I talked to him. He died like an hour later.
Did he seem to be in?
No, at 5:30. At 5:30, he was already relaxed. He had the respirator on. He was laying in bed. The respirator was on the pillow. His head was on the pillow. It looked like he was relaxed and sleeping. At that time, I got up out of the bed and stretched, and I sat down next to the bed to watch him. And I must have dozed off because within about 45 minutes after I knew it was 5:30. I remember looking at my watch and thinking I could sit next to him for a while until he wakes up and so forth. And he's got the respirator. Everything's okay right now. Blah blah. About 45 minutes later, I must have dozed off because all of a sudden I hear all kinds of commotion and noise in the room. People running in and out and they're yelling cold blue. And I'm looked at my son. They're all trying to revive him. So it's a matter of like a half an hour, 45 minutes. They took the blood test at 6. So this must have happened right afterwards. And it was 5:30 when I climbed out of the bed because he looked like he was resting and relaxing. The nurses are coming in all the time and checking him. So it's just I don't know. Speaking as a father, that I've been living in Guam for 45 years, so I have Guam experience, and experience in other places also. And I've been at least 3 kids have gone through the Seventh-day Adventist clinic, and 4 kids have been seen other doctors on Guam. First thing is that you are the parent, you are in charge. If you allow a doctor to intimidate you, and if you don't agree, and I've heard this from many parents or many family members say the exact same thing. They went along with what the doctor said, then later regretted it. It's a common problem. We have great doctors on Guam. I've had great experience with doctors on Guam. I have a great experience with doctors even at the Seventh-day Adventist clinic. But if you allow them to make every decision for you and you don't agree with it, but you allow them, you are putting your child and your family member's life at risk. If you don't like something that they're doing, you need to speak up and raise your voice or whatever. I yelled at my doctor, but it wasn't enough. I didn't know my son was dying. I should have yelled at him more. I should have raised a bigger fuss, but I didn't know the seriousness of the situation. He didn't care. He gave my dying son 20 minutes to do an annual exam and didn't respond to any of the symptoms. I asked afterwards, does he even own a stethoscope? So as parents, the other thing is, as parents, you're the one in charge. If you don't like what the doctor said, ask to speak to somebody else. Don't be embarrassed or shy, because when you do that, you put your family member's life at risk. That's a fact. I've spoken to so many people since this has happened. Many parents of kids and family members, and they've all told me they've had similar experience at Guam Memorial Hospital and at clinics on Guam, including Seventh-day Adventist Clinic. And they all say the same thing. They regret going by what the doctor said. So get a second opinion or do what you want. The other thing is a small thing. If you have a sick child in the morning and you're heading to the clinic, don't give them fever medicine. Because then you're going to get some doctor who can't think beyond his hand, and he's going to say, well, there's no fever now. There's no fever now. Maybe if I didn't give my child the fever medicine that morning before Seventh-day Adventist, my son would have been sick enough as Seventh-day Adventist with a fever for that doctor to maybe have done something. I gave my son medicine like we all do, got the Seventh-day Adventist. The doctor couldn't see beyond his hand, didn't want to do any blood tests, didn't want to do anything else, and that was the end of the story. That was the beginning of the end of my son. So avoid that. Let your son arrive or daughter arrive to the clinic sick so they can see how they really look. Otherwise, They don't care. You're the parent. Take charge. Don't trust these doctors. And remember something, and I said it already. We're dealing with some great doctors on Guam, but some doctors only meet minimal requirements to see and take care of your children. Would you want a babysitter that only meets minimal requirements, or a daycare that only meets minimal requirements, or a teacher with your children? I don't think so. Not if you can avoid it. I wish you the best.
The SDA clinic has not returned calls for their side of the story. An email to the administrator has gone unanswered. Candid has been able to verify, though, that Dr. Shinshin Miyagi and physician assistant Ethan Snyder still are employed there. What we mainly want to know on your behalf, especially if you have kids, is this. How can parents be assured in the wake of this cold tragedy that something like what happened to Asher Dean won't happen to one of their children, your children? Asher Dean isn't just someone whose death should be learned from. He's someone's son. He's a 6-year-old boy's brother and best friend in the whole world. It truly isn't enough to chalk up his memory to a lesson learned. While no amount of justice or answers will return this boy's life, both SDA and GMH have a lot of explaining to do. And that's just a start. Why was this boy refused the medical treatment he should have received from his doctor on the day he was there for his annual physical? Why did Dr. Miyagi ignore Mr. Lubofsky's pleas for the doctor to check his lungs, where he might have heard his pneumonic condition? Was Mr. Lubofsky discriminated against because he's an old man with 2 young sons? Was it his Yankee accent or the color of his skin? Did the doctor find the child to be beneath his practice? Or was he simply in a hurry? Some reason caused the doctor's alleged negligence. When Asher Dean went back the next day, why wouldn't Ethan Snyder let him see any doctor at the clinic? Did he notice that despite Asher having a fever, he was shivering? Wouldn't a physician's assistant understand that symptoms like those indicate an infection in the child's blood, septic shock? And perhaps that's why Mr. Snyder insisted that Asher be taken to the emergency room. So if that's the case, why didn't he send Asher's medical records there? Why hadn't he called the hospital prior to Asher arriving there and not a couple hours later? As for GMH, the question is simple. If a doctor understood that the child was in septic shock, why was he not placed in intensive care, every resource given to save his life? Why didn't a single doctor check his condition in the 12 hours before he coded? The government, through the parole board, gave more care, consideration, and service to a serial child rapist, Paul Mofness, than it gave to 5-year-old Asher Dean Lubofsky. Men and women in the parole board who based their decisions about Paul Mofness on issues of faith rather than the truth of the science of the sickness gave Paul Mofness a second chance at life, only for him to hurt children again. Yet a faith-based clinic where a desperate father brought his sick child for the science that could make him better was threatened, dismissed, and ignored. That little boy hadn't hurt anyone, and he didn't get a second chance. He never will, not in this lifetime. Monsters don't just lurk at bus stops. They aren't always the ones who look like thieves and hood rats. The worst ones rely on society's unwritten guidebook of social presentation to dismiss their misdeeds as mistakes and their monstrosity as human imperfection. This has been part 1 of our investigative look into Asher Dean Lubofsky's death. Before we get into the second story of the night, I want to give some perspective from someone who has worked closely with Guam Memorial Hospital. And there's been a campaign over the years, over the last 8 years at least, to paint the picture of a hospital that needs a lot of funding, and yes, that's true. A hospital that should not be referred to as Get Me to Hawaii or Get Me Some Other Help. But there's something I want to tell you. In the early days of 2011, I don't know if you remember that Governor Calvo fired the entire Guam Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees. It included, as its acting chair, our current governor, Lulian Guerrero. And the public was told that the firing was done in response to a 5-year-old boy from Kentucky who was here and was taken to GMH, and he lost his leg because a doctor left a clip clipped onto one of his arteries during the surgery that he had on his leg, and it wasn't noticed until it was too late, and he had to have the leg amputated. What Adelup never told anybody, and it was at the insistence of GMH's new medical director at the time, was that the true reason for the dismissal of the administrators and the board of trustees was they refused to disclose to the public that the hospital's system for notifying a national board about malpractice was not in place, and those notifications weren't being sent to the national board in an attempt to cover up the malpractice that was happening at Guam Memorial Hospital. I don't know what that is these days, but I am certain, just as certain as Mr. Lubofsky and many of you in the community, that as patients or as parents of patients, you have every right to question what happens at your hospital and what happens with your doctors and the clinics that you go to. It's such a sad tragedy, and we here at Candid are going to do as much as we can to get the truth out about this and to get more information about malpractice and the misdeeds that have been happening on this island. We will greatly appreciate your help, not just in sharing this story tonight and all our stuff from Candid, but in sending us your stories as well, because perhaps you were dismissed as well. Perhaps some warning you gave to a doctor or a physician's assistant or someone in a clinic or at the hospital went unnoticed or dismissed, and something bad happened or something bad almost happened. The more the people know the truth about these things, the better decisions we'll be able to make, and the more the government will be enticed to make the changes that are so greatly needed so that this kind of thing does not happen again. We're going to move on to our second story. So last night, we brought you the feature story of Matson Navigation and how it is seeking a monopoly through the court system. As a quick recap, Matson filed a claim or a civil suit in the District Court of Washington, D.C. To end the participation of APL, American President Lines, its only competitor here on Guam, and its participation in what's known as the Maritime Security Program. We explained last night how this has more to do than the economic significance of allowing Matson to have a monopoly. It also has something to do with our nation's preparedness for war, because part of what APL participates in this maritime security program is an agreement that they have that in time of war, the Secretary of Defense may call up APL for the use of its ships, and so it provides a naval fleet, a full naval fleet for America during time of war, a program that Matson has refused to participate in and also tried to get rid of during discussions for the National Defense Authorization Act, which funds and authorizes the Maritime Security Program. We also told you a bit about how the Chamber of Commerce, when we asked them very recently, when Johnny Rosario went to question Kathy Castro, the president of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, how they flatly said no. They will not file an amicus brief in the district court case in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the people of Guam to stop Matson's attempt at regaining its monopoly and shooting up our prices on just about everything that we buy on the shelves. And so we want to bring you that story. We want to bring you that package again, or part of it, where the Chamber of Commerce, where you can just see that they refuse to get involved. They refuse to do something that will help all of the people of Guam. Here it is.
Second question. Will the Chamber of Commerce file a friend of the court brief against Matson and in favor of who Matson is suing, the U.S. Department of Transportation?
No.
No. Okay. What is the Chamber's position on Matson's own filings that argue that U.S. DOT should discontinue APL's presence in Guam because APL offers significantly lower prices than Matson and therefore APL presents unfair competition to Matson?
Well, you know, Matson and APL are both members of the chamber,
Okay.
and so we support both members.
Okay.
And again, going back to the lawsuit, that's between those particular parties that are involved, and we have nothing to do with the lawsuit.
Okay.
So that was the Chamber of Commerce. And aside from the fact that they refuse to get involved in this Matson matter, which, you know, would leave most of us scratching our heads, why? Why wouldn't they want to get involved in this Matson matter? This stands for everything that the Chamber of Commerce stands for. It is about competition. It is about an assault on free markets by trying to get the government to intervene in order to affect this market. Why wouldn't the Chamber of Commerce, who supposedly represent the interests of small businesses, not want to have an opportunity to stop this huge corporation from jacking up the prices of those containers that all those small businesses will now have to afford? And then what will happen is those small businesses are going to have to raise their rates at the retail level, causing the prices of everything that we buy to go up as well, including medication. And something as part of this look into Matson navigation, one of the things that Candid is going to be looking into is whether the Guam legislature and the health insurance negotiating team is prepared to adjust rates or to adjust the GovGuam health insurance package, probably the largest health insurance package on this island, in the event that Matson wins its case in district court and creates a monopoly for itself. What happens then? How will we afford it? At every sector of this community, at every level, prices will be affected. It is the greatest economic question facing us in the short term. And yet, the Chamber of Commerce does not want to speak about it. And aside from the two senators we're bringing you tonight in interviews that we've had with them, we're not hearing anything from any of our elected officials in the legislature and at the governor's office, at least not yet. But before we get to those, I want to show you something that was sent to me by a source, a candid news source, a trusted news source. And why don't we go ahead to my screen? These are notes, internal notes taken by members of the Chamber of Commerce in a discussion that was had, and in basically a disputed discussion or an argument that was happening among chamber members regarding the Jones Act and specifically Matson's try or attempt to regain a monopoly. And many of these names are on a first name basis, or all of them. No one's last name is here, but there is a Len who is associated with Matson, and we assume that to be Len Isatoff, the former general manager. But in these notes, you can see a going back and forth about whether to get involved in this whole dispute about Matson and the monopoly it's trying to create. So it seems that they went back and forth regarding certain questions about Hawaii, about the monopoly, about an exemption that Guam currently has. If you go to the second page of these notes, my comments regarding Len's points are as follows. The domestic Guam ocean freight market is limited at approximately 30,000 TEU per annum. That's, I can't remember what TEU stands for. but it's not insubstantial. The market should determine whether or not one, two, or more carriers can economically serve Guam, not the single current participant in the trade, Matson Navigation Company, which stands to benefit from its monopoly. Maintaining the Jones Act in its current form will ensure a permanent Matson monopoly, which is obviously what Matson is seeking. Even if the Guam market ultimately proves to be too small to support any more than one carrier, just what exactly does that have to do with the Jones Act? Isn't a monopoly enough, whether operated with the US-built, US flag, foreign-built US flag, or foreign flag ships? Why does it have to be reinforced by a law that restricts trade? At the very least, why shouldn't Guam choose to support Jones Act reform that would allow domestic carriers serving Guam take advantage of the much lower cost of foreign-built ships and pass that savings along to their customers? In particular, because the barriers to entry would be so much lower, the one remaining carrier would always have to keep an eye open, looking over their shoulder, wondering if another operator would be thinking about entering the trade. And he says, Len did his best to attempt at downsizing the Guam market by excluding outer island cargo. For what reason other than to attempt to convince members the market isn't big enough for more than Matson? These containers still get shipped to Guam, and there is no reason for their exclusion. It became clear to me that's the slant that would be presented by Matson in attempting to paint a picture the Jones Act is good for Guam. So there you have it, that an internal debate is happening or was happening within the Guam Chamber of Commerce, but the debate seems to have been settled since Kathy Castro, its president, in all the answers that she gave and the questions that Johnny asked her during that interview. That one was the most decisive, the one about filing an amicus brief in defense of the people and the economy of Guam. She just flatly said, no, they're not going to. So let's see what our political leaders have to say. Candid sent a question regarding this Matson issue over to every single member of the Guam legislature. So far, 2 have responded and have allowed us to do interviews. And the first one we want to bring you is from the chairman of the Oversight Committee on Economic Development, under whose committee any sort of resolution authorizing the Guam legislature to enter an amicus brief or an amicus curiae before the District Court of Washington, D.C. in this civil case, which was filed on November 27, 2018, and which very soon could be settled because of 2 motions for summary judgment before the judge there. What he has to say, considering that he is the chairman on economic development. It's Senator Clint Ridgell. Senator, as the chairman on economic development, can I have your general thoughts on Matson Navigation's efforts to push out APL through the District Court in Washington, D.C.?
Sure. I'm not too familiar with the actual lawsuit, I guess, that they're doing, but I did read it. But I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if they have any legal standing. Maybe they do. But I think in general, we always want to see competition. So I hope that there's a way that APL can stay, and I hope Matson's not trying to do something to push APL out of the market. We absolutely need to have more competition. That's what free market is based off of. The entire free market premise of capitalism is based around this idea, this concept of competition.
Do you believe that it's not going to be a good deal for the people of Guam, as in they will have to suffer through higher prices if Matson regains its monopoly on this island? And your general thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. It's funny they bring up. In the suit, when I read part of the harms that Matson was listing as harm that was caused to it in the suit, one of the things they list is the fact that because APL is here, they have to compete and lower prices. So, yeah, absolutely. It would hurt the island because if we lost APL, Matson, and admittedly in their lawsuit, they say that they've been forced to lower prices because of APL's presence out here. So if they take APL away, then that means prices would likely go back up because of a lack of competition.
Will you consider either supporting or leading an effort for the legislature to file an amicus brief in support of the U.S. Department of Transportation, basically in support of keeping APL as a competitor here?
Well, I would definitely consider it. I'm not sure if that's exactly what we would want to do. I mean, I have to look at it and see. I'm not an attorney. We'd need attorneys to look at it and see, is this something that the legislature should step in on or not? So, yeah.
Are you aware that the Chamber of Commerce has refused to get involved in this effort, and what are your thoughts on that?
I haven't heard that, and I'm surprised that they wouldn't want to get involved in this effort.
So this is good news. The chairman on economic development sees a problem, and he is willing to look into it, and hopefully will lead to a solution. What about the rest of the members of the Guam legislature? Well, Candid was fortunate enough to speak with one more senator who was part of the Democratic majority, and it was Senator Joe San Augustine. And he has some very strong things to say about this issue. Let's take a look. Let's move on to the issue of massive navigation, because it relates kind of to the minimum wage in that the Chamber of Commerce told Candid News that they will not file an amicus brief in favor of keeping APL as the competitor against Matson and Matson's federal civil case
It's
against.
to prevent APL from coming, right?
Well, to prevent APL from, or to prevent APL from staying. So APL is the only competitor to Matson. They're at 30% of the market. Matson's at 70%. In Matson's own filings in federal court in November of last year, in the federal court of Washington, D.C., Matson says, as one of its complaints, that because of APL's existence on Guam, APL offers significantly lower prices, and that has caused Matson to lower their prices. So they actually complain about having to offer lower prices to the people of Guam. What are your thoughts on this?
That becomes, that's really funny, and the reason why is because we've got to maintain competition in Guam. That's the only way it's going to lower the price. The GRT went up. Okay, it went up 5%, but if the cost comes down, there's less money going to come in on the GRT, right? And if we're going to say, let's not allow APL to be here, why? If they're keeping the price down, it's good for the people of Guam. You remember the Jones Act prevents anybody else from coming to Guam. If the Jones Act wasn't here, all the prices will go down. We wouldn't have no choice but to go down. We wouldn't be concerned about the 5%. We wouldn't be concerned about the cost of cigarette went up $1. We wouldn't be concerned about anything. Everything would come down. We would be just like anywhere in the United States where the cost of gas, a gallon, would go down. They would have no choice. Because why? Everybody will be able to bring it. Every shipping company that has the ability to bring fuel here will bring it. Every shipping company that could bring any goods will bring it. And that's our problem with the Jones Act. So with the APL and Matson, Matson, you've been doing great to Guam, so has APL. But everybody should be allowed the opportunity to stay on Guam, do business Guam, bring the price down. We don't have to change the GRT. Because the price of goods right now, if we reduce it from 5 to 4, the price is not going to go down. You're still going to pay the same. GRT will just go down in collection. And it's not going to do anybody any good.
Is this Matson issue something that you're willing to talk to your colleagues about, and maybe get a discussion going about the legislature filing an amicus brief?
Well, I can bring it up to them. Since you brought it up to me, I will bring it up to them. I would ask them. Because that's something that just doesn't sound right. Why would you not allow competition in Guam? We're not in a third world.
Yeah. Well, that's what they want to do, is push out the competition, not through the market, but through the government.
That's not good. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's in the best interest of the people of Guam. And they're already making money. Like you said, they got 70%. Enjoy your 70%. If it forces you to go lower, well then go lower. Go lower, compete with them.
So 2 out of our 15 senators have spoken up, have discussed this problem, have recognized this problem, and are willing to discuss a solution where someone in our community or some institution in our community will try to help and try to give us a voice here on Guam. And it's not just Guam, it's also the people of the CNMI and the people of the rest of our Micronesian region who depend on their leaders to speak up about something as significant as the cost of shipping, because as we said yesterday in our first report on this, it's almost everything that we consume. All the clothes we buy, most of the clothes we buy, almost all of the food that we eat, our medication, everything that you can think of that's on a store shelf comes aboard a ship Sometimes it's on an airplane, but as we'll discuss in the days ahead, as we go further into this story about the Jones Act, airline carriers also are part of that. And there is an attempt by one of the larger airlines on our island, or there have been attempts for many years by the large airlines on our island, to squash any discussion on Jones Act reform so that things can be better for the people of Guam. But what always seems to rise to the surface of the debate is a discussion where hidden inside it is what's best for the profits of corporations like Matson and United Airlines. So we'll follow this even more. We will follow up with the remaining senators to see what their positions would be and see if there's enough support from at least 8 people who will recognize this problem and are willing to sit down and discuss a solution so that a resolution can be made to the district court in Washington, D.C. in the form of an amicus curiae. We'll bring you more about that tomorrow. Ending tonight's newscast, well, this is our dry run of newscasts. I want to bring you from Guam Lost and Found Pets. This plea from Tiana Joe Chaco. It's on my screen. She has a lost dog. She says, friends, family, residents of Talafofo, please be on the lookout for Pablo. He dashed out the house around 3 p.m. today and hasn't made it home. Please call 486-7373 or 488-3379 if you find him. And then Twyla, again, I'm not sure, I guess maybe it's a relative or something, says that there's a reward for his safe return. I'm guessing Therese Chaco or Tiana Joe Chaco is the person in the picture holding the dog. It's a really cute dog. Please, if any of you have seen this dog or know where this dog may be, please give Therese or Tiana a call at those numbers that they provided and make it a happy ending for this family and for this dog. That's all we have for tonight. We apologize for the technical problems that we were having at the start or during our first newscast. I deleted it from my page. But thank you for sticking with us through this. I'm sorry about the late time. And from all of us here at Candid, Sizu Ismaasi, for all the support that you've given and for helping us to spread the truth and to see to it that justice is done in this community. So from our studios here in Hagåtña, good night.